Hola clase, hoy vamos a hablar sobre el presente perfecto del subjuntivo y también vamos a hablar sobre el pluscuamperfecto del subjuntivo. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about two of the perfect tenses in the subjunctive. Okay, if you'll think back to chapter 4, we did a lot with the indicative perfect tenses. Okay, so what I mean by that is how to say I have studied, okay, using present perfect. I had studied, I would have studied, or I will have studied. We studied 4 of those indicative perfect tenses in chapter 4, and today we're going to talk about perfect tenses in the subjunctive and compare them with those in the indicative. Okay, first let's look at our note guide. We're going to talk about formation. Okay, for present perfect subjunctive, okay, you're going to, just like all other perfect tenses, you're going to need haber plus a past participle. Okay, so if it's present perfect subjunctive, we need the subjunctive present tense of haber. So that's going to be haya, hayas, haya, hayamos, hayan. And then, just like we did in chapter 4, to form a past participle, you've got 2 steps. You're going to want to drop the AR, ER, or IR. And then you want to add ado to an AR verb or ido to an ER, IR verb. Okay, so if you were trying to say, I may have eaten, you would say, haya comido. Okay, on the next part of your note guide, I wanted to remind you before moving on that there are quite a few, 14 to be exact, 14 verbs that have an irregular past participle. So what I mean by that is with abrir, you cannot simply drop the IR and add ido to it and say abrido. Okay, its past participle form is irregular, it's abierto. Okay, I'm sure you still remember these from chapter 4, but I wanted to give you a quick reference on your note guide. Okay, so let's talk about how we would use the present perfect subjunctive. Okay, 3 things are going to have to be true. Number 1, there's going to have to be a change in subject. Number 2, your main clause or your first verb in the sentence must be weird. Okay, so these 2 things are probably sounding very familiar to you. Okay, because that's what had to be true in order to use just regular present subjunctive. And the third thing is that the subordinate clause verb has to be in the past. Okay? So, let's compare that for a second with the present subjunctive. Present subjunctive, we would say in this green sentence, I hope that you study. Okay? Both parts of the sentence are in present tense. Therefore, we used present subjunctive. But here, my subordinate clause verb is in the past. Okay, therefore I have to use present perfect subjunctive. So let's look at that. It says here in English, I hope that you have studied, or I hope that you studied. In Spanish, you would say, espero que tú hayas estudiado. Okay, hopefully that makes sense for using the present perfect subjunctive. Let's now talk about the past perfect subjunctive, which you're going to notice a lot of similarities here. First, in formation, it's a perfect tense, so it's formed just like the rest. You need a form of haber with the past participle. Okay, so if it's past perfect subjunctive, well then you need the past subjunctive form of haber. In the past subjunctive, haber is hubiera, hubieras, hubiera, hubiéramos, hubieran. And then again, to form your past participle, you drop the ending, the AR, ER, IR, and you add ado or ido. Okay, just like we did with the present subjunctive, you can have the same 14 irregulars on the past participles. Okay, so that list on section B of your note guide applies to both present perfect subjunctive and past perfect subjunctive. Okay, so when would we use the past perfect subjunctive? This is going to look very familiar. Oh, I forgot to tell you that. To conjugate this, I might have eaten, you would say hubiera comido. Okay, so let's get back to usage here. To use the past perfect subjunctive, 3 things are going to have to be true in your sentence. One, just like all subjunctive sentences, there's going to have to be a change in subject. Two, that main clause verb is going to have to be weird. And three, both parts of your sentence, both the main clause and the subordinate clause, have to be in the past. So let's look at my example here in green. I hoped that you had studied. Okay, both of these or all three of these things are true, so we need past perfect subjunctive. In Spanish it would translate, yo esperaba que tú hubieras estudiado. Alright, so let's look at some examples of how these are used before we move on to the practice problems. Okay, so number one, I doubt that they have read a book or read that book. This sentence does have a change in subject. I doubt is weird. And then over here in the subordinate clause, have read, that's in the past. So in this sentence, you're going to be using present perfect subjunctive. Let's look at number two. I doubted that they had read that book. Okay, well, there's a change in subject. Doubted is weird. And both parts of my sentence are in the past, so I'm going to need past perfect subjunctive. But let's go down to three. I know that they have read that book. Okay, there is a change in subject, but I know is not a weird verb. I know this. There's no element of doubt in there. Okay, so there's no need for subjunctive. If there's no need for subjunctive, then this is an indicative sentence. This is what you would have written in chapter 4, okay? So they have read, that's just regular present perfect, okay? Or what you can call present perfect indicative. Let's look at 4. I knew that they had read that book. Okay, so there is a change in subject again. And the whole sentence is in the past, but I knew, again, there's no element of doubt, so you can't use subjunctive here. You're just going to have to use regular old past perfect, okay? Or what they may call past perfect indicative here. So let's see how these would translate in Spanish. Dudo que hayan leído ese libro. Dudaba que hubieran leído ese libro. And then down here for 3 and 4 are indicative sentences. Remember, indicative means not subjunctive. Sé que han leído ese libro. And sabía que habían leído ese libro. Okay. Now, let's go to our practice problems and see if we can identify when we need subjunctive, when we don't, and then when we need the present perfect subjunctive and when we need the past perfect subjunctive. Okay, here's our practice problems. Our directions tell us, please complete these sentences with the present perfect subjunctive, past perfect subjunctive, present perfect indicative, or past perfect indicative. Okay, I tried to keep it a little bit easier for you. The first 3, these are all present tense sentences. Okay, so you're either going to be using present perfect subjunctive or present perfect indicative. And then the bottom 3, I put them all in the past. Okay, so that means you either need past perfect subjunctive or past perfect indicative. We'll do number 1 together to get you started, and then I'd like you to pause. Okay, so number 1, I want that you have understood the homework. Okay, so is there a change in subject? Yes. Is I want weird? Yes. Okay, so you need present perfect subjunctive here. You should have hayas entendido. All right, please pause me and complete numbers 2 through 6. Okay, let's review. Number 2, it frustrates me that they have arrived late. There's a change in subject, and frustrating, that's emotion, that's a weird verb. So I do need present perfect subjunctive here. Hayan llegado. Look at number 3. We believe that she has seen that movie. We believe. That's a statement of certainty. No need for subjunctive here. So just regular present perfect. Ha visto. 4. They preferred that I had already taken that class. So you've got a change in subject, and preferred is a weird verb. So you need past perfect subjunctive. Hubiera tomado. 5. She hoped that we had done the homework. There's a change in subject. Hoped is a weird verb, so we need past perfect subjunctive. Hubiéramos hecho. Lastly, everyone knew that they had not gone to the game. So everyone knew this. There's no doubt, there's no element of doubt there. If they knew it, okay, that's a certainty. I need to use indicative tense here. So you've got past perfect, okay, past perfect indicative. Habían ido. Okay, I know that was a lot of information today. Please take a chance if you've got any questions. Take a chance to read your book. Look at page 143 in your conversación y repaso. Also, if you've got something, jot it down on your note guide. We'll go over it in class.